I'm very, very pleased to have with us today Ben Morton-Wright, who's the founder and CEO of Global Philanthropic, which is an international philanthropic consultancy and advisor group that actually operates internationally. So he has lots of experience and information about fundraising to share with our students. So unfortunately, the students won't have the pleasure of meeting you in person this year, Ben. So if that's okay with you, I would love you to tell us a little bit more in your own words about your professional background and experience in fundraising.
Well, it's a shame, and everything's changing in the current environment, so maybe soon we will be able to meet in person again. We're looking forward to that, and that's another discussion point which we've written quite a lot about, the impact of COVID. But in terms of my own background, I suppose the most relevant thing for your students is to know that I have also been through the MBA hurdle race quite a lot of years ago. So I know the feeling, and I was fortunate enough to have done that and did my actual thesis on fundraising consultancy, and that was before I established Global Philanthropic. So I established the firm about 20 years ago, so it was a long while ago. So I appreciate the hurdle race. So as being number one of the hurdles for many hurdles to come, I look forward to discussing this topic, which is one of my favorite topics, as you can see. My own background, I started out in the university sector. Had the weird, crazy idea that I might get involved in politics. So I ended up as student council president, all that kind of good stuff. And then fell into fundraising, really. A vice chancellor kind of took me under his wing and said, why don't you try this? Alumni relations and then fundraising. And that was in the 90s. And I think at that time in the UK, there were literally about 100 fundraisers. There was no one. So I was very fortunate to be at the beginning of the kind of journey. And that led me to raise a number of university fundraising. 3, I think I did an ancient, I did a technical, and I did a new university. And that then led me in 2002 to set up Global Philanthropic in Hong Kong. And since then, we built the business up. And we have now 3 businesses across Asia Pacific, Europe, and the US, and about 30 consultants and several thousand clients. And we worked with all sorts of sides of fundraising, high net worth. We advise high net worth right the way through to big projects, strategic projects. So anyway, very pleased to hear more and maybe set some challenges and share some thoughts about what's going on in the world at the moment.
Thank you so much, Ben. That's a really, really nice overview. And so the one thing that I noticed is that you are quite an advocate for fundraising. I saw this really wonderful video on your website explaining a little bit about your understanding of and approach to fundraising, where you talk about the art and the science of fundraising. Could you explain a little bit more behind those ideas to us?
Yeah, sure. This is something I've actually thought about quite a long time. It's not, maybe it's because the art side of my brain works a bit more than the process side. So I may be covering up for my deficiencies, if you like, but, or maybe not, I don't know. But it's the way my brain works, and it certainly has been affected in terms of this issue about where art and science should blend. I think, my view is that there's different schools of thought, and particularly consultant companies. And one sort of extreme operational thought is that it's just all about the numbers. That actually, if you just go out and you ask enough people that are warm enough and you ask them enough times, you eventually get enough money out of them. And there is some truth in that, in that you need moves management, you need process, you need to actually have a system to track people. But actually that misses the point, because of course, what are you asking for? Is it inspiring them? Are you asking for things that are completely emotional that they might connect with, or are you asking for things that they might not connect with? And that actually is the reality of whether you're going to be successful or not. So I'm a great advocate, not only because that's my school of thought, of thinking about fundraising not just from a process side, but also from a creative side. And I've got quite a bit of involvement in the creative industries, and I'm very aware about how important that is. And I see really good fundraisers actually are about really good ideas. And so the creative side is so super important. And if someone said to me a few days ago that, big ideas lead to big gifts, and I think that's absolutely true. And that's been my experience. So, I'm a real advocate of not just seeing fundraising as a process. You must get your process right. You've got to get your data right. You've got to get your moves management right. Of course, that's the basic. But the real art of fundraising is when you blend that with really good creativity. So what's the big idea? How can you motivate donors to do something exceptional? How can you, from donors' perspective, what's going to make them feel amazing, and what's going to make them feel really good about life? And if you connect that with some really big ideas and push them through creative ideas, in my experience, you can do something really remarkable in fundraising. So that's a part of the DNA of the firm, is to talk about creativity. And, you know, I'm a big advocate of that, because actually, in a way, it's kind of more important than the process. You can have all the databases you want, you can have all the processes you want. If you're not creative about how you apply it, it's not going to work. It simply isn't going to work, or it will work at a level that's just operational. So this is super, super important, and a big advocate. And I think, you know, it's hard to teach, you know, other than you've got to find space. We talked about time and space. We had a way, we do a thing called Talking Philanthropy, where we invite everyone to come. And our first one, we themed it around this idea of time and space. We actually took everyone's mobile phones off when they came into the room. We refused to allow them to use them for the day, and said, actually, you can't think properly if you've got a mobile phone tinging, as mine did just a minute ago, all the time. So this idea of time and space, of about actually creating space to think creatively and do that in kind of wacky ways, that isn't about sitting at a desk and isn't looking at a computer. It's about interacting. It's about thinking. It's about flip charts. It's about doing things in creative ways. So anyway, it's a bugbear of mine, and it's something that I really feel passionate about, that you have to have that mix of creativity and fundraising.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that's a really, really nice way to think about it, to remind students that just sitting at a desk, you might not get the perfect solution. So get out there, do different things, think out of the box, you know, get moving. And
use other people to stimulate debate. I mean, the power of the collective is so important. You know, you're very hard, you know, just yesterday I spent a whole day, we have a very tricky big idea that we're trying to develop. So we all, even though it's, you know, we have to socially distance and be very careful, but 3 of us actually met on Zoom calls and what have you, and we had flip charts, and we just spent a day just workshopping it on, you know, just workshopping the issue. And at the end of the day, we actually came up with what we think is the solution. And you couldn't do that unless there were a few people involved.